Hello, this is your host, Belle Chavey speaking. Welcome to today's episode of the Morrison Family Center for Student Wellbeing's podcast, WellCat 101. The purpose of this podcast is to give students an opportunity to share their college experiences, their advice, or interesting anecdotes for listeners who are students, staff, parents, etc. Each episode topic will be related to student well-being and or mental health through the lens of positivity and growth. We hope you enjoy this episode of WellCat 101. Hello there, and welcome back to WellCat 101, the student-led podcast centered around topics relating to student mental health and well-being. These next few episodes, we will be discussing topics relating to loneliness, finding a sense of belonging, and how community impacts our physical and mental health. K-State's Common Read this year, Together by Vivek H, Murthy, MD, who served as the 19th and 21st Surgeon General of the U.S., discusses related topics, and you will probably hear me reference quotes or passages from this book. If you have not read it and you would like to, there are links provided in the description to more information about the book, including other podcast episodes that Dr. Murthy has been a guest on. So, on this episode of WellCat 101, we are going to be discussing the mental health side of loneliness. We will be delving into topics relating to emotional/psychological effects of chronic loneliness, how loneliness impacts mental health issues like anxiety, and when or how to seek support. However, I will not just be talking about these subjects alone, because today we have...
My name is Karan Bhatia. I am a staff therapist at K-State, working at Lafene Health Center for the Counseling and Psychological Services Department. I've been there for coming up to 2 years now, which is wild to think about.
Wow.
And so I mostly help with individual and group therapy and other services that we offer at CAPS. And I'm also the outreach coordinator for CAPS, so do a lot of outreach for other classes and organizations and professors and stuff on campus as well.
Yes, we're so happy to have you. We love CAPS. We link Lafene and CAPS all the time on this podcast. Awesome. Shout out. But before we dive too deep, I always have an intro question before we start. And a lot of the time they're silly, but for these next few episodes, since they're all kind of grouped together by the Common Read, I like to have questions about like kind of what we're talking about related to connection maybe, or today it is, what is your favorite part of your typical daily routine, which daily routine is really important for mental health. So excluding like if you're on a work trip or like going on vacation, what is your favorite part of your daily routine? It could be any time of day.
That's a good question. This doesn't happen every day for sure, and that's something that I'm trying to work on, but I've been working on just kind of finding time to take care of myself as well. So it's been a constant effort to find 1 hour in the day where I'm going to do whatever I want to do for myself, whether it be just binging YouTube videos or just playing video games or sometimes just going out for a walk or going to work out or whatever it may be. It's like that 1 hour in the day is my hour and I choose to do what I'd like to do.
Yeah, no, and it's nice definitely to have that hour to just for whatever you need. Like, I don't take naps a whole lot, which is kind of strange because I feel like a lot of that makes me a little bit different than a lot of my peers. Yeah. But I'm a theater major and a psychology dual major, and so I do productions at K-State, and our rehearsals are always in the evening. Having like an hour before rehearsal to just either eat dinner or to like lay down. And I know, scrolling on your phone is probably not a good use of your free time, but sometimes I just need turning my brain off.
We just need that TikTok brain rot sometimes. That's totally fine.
Literally, sometimes I just need to laugh. Yeah. The internet was invented for cat videos that are so stupid that you forget them in 30 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
My favorite part of my daily routine is actually kind of similar to your answer, but I started taking a walk every single day. Okay. It started 2 years ago, especially in the summertime. But I grew up in a small town, And so you could kind of just walk downtown and walk back in like 30 to 45 minutes. And so I would walk from my house downtown and back in like 30 to 45 minutes. And first time I did that, it was like, oh, that was fun. I think it was like to pick up something for my mom.
Yeah.
But then like the next day I also had to go and get something. And I was like, oh, I'll just walk there, you know, maybe get my steps in. And then it just became a habit that now, like, when it's like a toddler at nap time, when I don't have my walk, I'm like cranky. I'm like angry.
The rest of your day. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, for sure.
Or sometimes if I don't have like the mental capacity to like think about or process something or brainstorm ideas for something, I'm literally like, okay, I'll wait until my walk for me to do it.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It's really, really helpful to me. And I think even during the school year when maybe I can't find time to actually like go walking to my classes, like to and from my classes, or finding like 10 minutes of time to just like do a little round about campus is really nice.
That's just you getting the blood flow going as well, and like just getting activity, right? And physical activity, and it doesn't have to be like going to the gym or running on the treadmill. Like walking to class in itself, or just doing chores like mowing the lawn and that kind of stuff, is activity in itself, and that helps.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you've clearly experienced. So
yes. And I like you were saying, I'm not hardcore. It's not like to make me sweat or to like, you know, burn calories or whatever. Yeah. I'm literally just like, I need to move my body so that I feel like stuck somewhere.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, that is my favorite part. Yeah. But let's dive into our topic today. We have a lot to talk about because this topic, loneliness, is a topic in itself that is just very broad and very big. And so that's why we're kind of talking about different aspects of it. And today we're focusing on the mental health aspect of it and how loneliness, specifically like chronic loneliness, impacts mental health. And when we're talking about loneliness, a very distinct difference that Dr. Murthy actually defines in his book as well is there's a difference between solitude and loneliness. And I know that a lot of, as someone who is like, I would say I'm an introvert and an extrovert at different times, but I'm a lot more introverted, and I definitely do need to charge my social battery by being by myself. That I think is solitude. And it can be, you know, spending time with yourself, having doing the things that you enjoy by yourself is much different than the kind of like loneliness that we are talking about. This kind of loneliness is the kind of loneliness where you long for connection, but you don't really know how to get it. Absolutely. In Dr. Murthy's book, a quote from it, he says, in 2016, Dr. Naomi Eisenberger and fellow researchers reported that the experience of helping others lower activity in the brain's stress and threat centers including the amygdala, dorsal anterior, cingulate cortex, and anterior insula. At the same time, increased activity is seen in the parts of our brain that is associated with caregiving and rewards. So this indicates that helping others reduces our stress even as it increases our sense of well-being making. So when you're around other people, it is physiologically helping you out. And I just thought that was a really interesting quote to open with today, because I was like, it's very sciencey.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can just start off by asking you, what are some of the emotional or psychological effects of chronic loneliness that you have seen?
So I want to start with probably defining loneliness for me as well. And so I see loneliness as, firstly, a deep unmet human need. And so, and that doesn't have to be just being alone, but also, like you said, like even when you're in a crowd, it's that sense of feeling unseen or disconnected, even when you're in a large crowd or have other people around you. And so a lot of times it tends to be underneath the surface of a number of different mental health issues that kind of come up as well. And because, like you said, and like the quote said from Dr. Murthy, right? Like belonging is that basic psychological need, just like food or water. It tells us that we matter. It gives us a sense of belonging and kind of that helps us mentally, physically, all those things that you mentioned. So when it comes to the mental health or I guess psychological effects, I would say chronic loneliness tends to definitely impact increases in depression and anxiety, tends to impact our sleep. And disturbances can be in any way, whether it be trouble falling asleep or trouble staying asleep, or just making it really hard for you to wake up in the morning as well. And along with that, a lot of that chronic stress and anxiety can also, just like loneliness, can also lead to a number of physical health issues as well, which you'll probably hear more about in other podcasts. And so a lot of times what happens, and the biggest issue with chronic loneliness, because it's very human for us to kind of internalize that within ourselves. So a lot of times we think about it as like, oh, maybe something is wrong with me, right? And it gives that sense of hopelessness and worthlessness. And that often leads to people isolating or withdrawing even more when they kind of need to be doing the opposite, which is seeking connection and looking for that as well.
Absolutely. And Dr. Murthy even says that in his book of without meaning to, people who experience chronic loneliness will withdraw even more, almost compacting the issue and making it worse.
Right.
You mentioned anxiety and depression. How does a lack of belonging or a sense of loneliness impact mental health conditions like anxiety and depression in young adults?
So in young adults, I would say, especially for college students, right? It's a lot of times it's their first time being away from home. And so their identity and self-worth are often determined by the connections they make on campus, whether it be with friends, with professors, or other, or if they're working full-time jobs or part-time jobs as part of it, like connecting with coworkers, whoever it may be. And so it's a lot of their sense of self-worth is determined by their environment and who they choose to or choose not to seek connection with as well. And so, again, it tends to be a very underlying thing that we don't often think about impacting depression and anxiety, but often one symptom literally of major depressive disorder is this feeling of constantly wanting to withdraw and constantly wanting to isolate yourself from other people. And so that's kind of what it pertains to. And a lot of times it's hard for us to see that or notice that, how much of that is impacting, or how much loneliness is actually impacting other aspects or other stressors that we have as well.
Absolutely. And I think that, like you said, it's hard to catch sometimes, because like we were kind of discussing in the pre-meeting of loneliness is something that everybody kind of pretends like they don't experience. But I think every person on this earth at one time or another has felt lonely. And I think chronic loneliness is something that a lot of people also experience. Yeah. But I think that there's a level of shame that maybe comes along with that. Of
course. Yeah, for sure. And to that, again, that makes it so much easier to continue to withdraw, right? Because it's you feel a sense of shame or embarrassment through that. And so obviously we don't get the urge to share that with other people or feel vulnerable with other people because of that.
And I think sometimes as a young adult, maybe trying to explain, I know that I am fortunate to be close with my parents, but if I was feeling chronically lonely and tried to explain to my parents or people that loved me, I really, I just feel lonely. I don't feel a sense of emotional connection. I don't feel connected. I think they would want to help, but I don't know if they would know quite how, because it's we're here for you. We are, what can we do to make you feel, more loved? And it's sometimes the solution is different than that. Sometimes you can be surrounded by people that you are friends with, but if the quality of those connections is not what you need, then you can feel lonely in a room of 1,000 people.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of what that's pertaining to in terms of what you said is also the sense of purpose that they have, right? And a lot of times we think about our sense of purpose as And Dr. Murthy said this as well when he interviewed a bunch of college students and young adults. A lot of them defined their sense of purpose to be something related to gaining money or fame or power, which, again, not wrong to seek those things in any way, but thinking about the aspect of there's many people who are rich, famous, or powerful that will tell you that they've never felt more lonely before as well. And so finding that sense of purpose as a sense, as part of like belonging, being a part of that as well is important and something that's overlooked a lot of times. And so it leads to us not really prioritizing that as well in today's world, because a lot of times we're always kind of living in the present and thinking about today. And so thinking about how we can find that sense of connection in our today as well is really important to consider.
Yeah, totally. And mentioning Dr. Murthy interviewing people makes me think of, I can't remember if it's in the first or second chapter of the book, he talks about that sense of purpose and that feeling a sense of purpose is so important to combating feeling lonely, because if you can find other people who also have similar sense of purpose, then that automatically links you together to other people. And I'm remembering a story of someone that he talked about that went to the doctor for and we'll probably talk about this in the episode talking about the physical aspects of loneliness, but came to the doctor with chronic health issues, and the doctor asked him what was kind of going on in his life, and he was talking about feeling lonely, and he said, the worst thing that ever happened to me was winning the lottery. And of course this doctor was like, say that again? Like, what? And he said, well, I won the lottery, so obviously I don't have to work anymore. I have all this money. I bought this giant house, and I have all of these nice things. And as cliche as it sounds, he's like, he's got this big house, but he has nobody to fill it with. He doesn't need to work anymore. But he said to the doctor he used to work at a bakery, and he loved the hard work that he was doing. And when he would come home tired, it was a good kind of tired, because he was tired from doing something that he loved to do. And so then when he decided, oh, well, I don't have to really work for money anymore, so I can quit that, realized how much he actually missed the work that he was doing. And I know that that's not the case for everyone, but his sense of purpose was not tied to a monetary value. But then when he got all this money and was like kind of trying to change it to be that way, that was when he realized he didn't see the people at work that he used to see anymore, or he didn't have those daily interactions with regular customers like he did anymore. And it really took a toll. And so, yes, money being success, if your definition of success is having money and financial stability, that's great. But when you have a deeper sense of purpose, that is also fulfilling. For sure. And I think that connection to other people is so important to find what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Yeah.
And so in your experience, what helps people begin to rebuild a sense of connection and emotional safety?
So a lot of times, and this can probably be also related to a lot of times what students come in with to CAPS as well, is this sense of kind of like you said, sometimes it's burnout, sometimes it's a lack of motivation. And we often don't look into, or they're not often aware of the aspect of like, how much time are you spending with people that you care about? Or how much time are you spending just by yourself? Or do you choose to just isolate yourself a lot of times as well, because you're so busy and you have so many things to kind of deal with as well? And so some things that we've kind of worked on in terms of helping is, firstly, I think understanding that building that safety or that emotional safety also starts with like your own purpose, right? So understanding, like taking small steps to interact with people and find that sense of connection, whether it be just finding spaces or safe spaces to be vulnerable, or whether it be like with people that they know that they can feel comfortable being vulnerable to as well. Because a lot of times I've seen students that kind of come in and say like, I know that I'm always there for other people, and so it makes it hard for me to be vulnerable or share that I'm struggling, because I've set this pattern of like, I'm always put together and I need to keep maintaining that. Like I need to keep wearing that mask of being perfect or having the perfect life. And that often is the case for a lot of people, and we don't realize that as well. And so understanding and finding spaces and even like small time interactions, whether it be like just talk to one person after class or during class, kind of thing, or finding other spaces, like I said, to be vulnerable, whether it be engaging in therapy at CAPS, whether it be like group therapy. I can shamelessly plug all the services that we have as well.
Absolutely. They will all be linked.
Yeah, for sure. And thinking about like aspects of, so one thing that we're also doing in the fall is like a series of WellCat chat topics as well. So that is one other space that we're hoping to kind of provide for students to just come in and talk about different topics that often aren't talked about like day to day on a college campus as well. So I feel like I'm driving away from the question you had, but thinking about, so just small, consistent interactions, or if it's hard for you to find those connections, even engaging in acts of service can be a big thing. And I know Dr. Murthy, again, preaches that throughout his book as well, and how much that helps build that shared sense of purpose like you talked about previously, right? Like finding ways to serve alongside others gives us that sense of purpose, because we are doing something together and we are joining specific causes or things that we're doing that we all care about together. And that, again, gives us that sense of purpose and belonging as well.
Absolutely. I agree with everything that you said. And I was thinking about how, unlike the story of the man who loved his job and then got all this money and had to quit, I feel like a lot of college students, maybe their jobs right now, their maybe part-time job at Chick-fil-A is not their sole purpose in life. If it is, awesome. But if it's not, then how do you find things that still feel like you're making an impact, and that you're not just like going through the motions of every day? And like we kind of talked about with daily routines or acts of service, or joining clubs, finding a purpose that fulfills you, even if it's just for an hour to a day or an hour to a week, can make a giant impact in your mental health, because you can find other people that enjoy the same thing, or you can find company within yourself. If it's something like maybe you are a really creative individual, but you feel like you don't have an outlet because you're busy all of the time, making space for you to write, or as much as social media is a double-edged sword, if you create a social media for yourself where you want to share poetry, prose, a video of you singing, dancing, acting, something, doing something creative or cool that you're like, I really enjoy this thing and I want to share it. Or if you start, volunteering somewhere and you find other like-minded people that say you volunteered in an animal shelter, they also love helping animals or helping people, that can really, that all of a sudden opens all of those doors for you, and you don't feel like you're going through the motions in some sort of like, I don't want to say meaninglessness, but it can kind of feel that way.
Yeah. And exactly what you said there, right? Like everything you said, like even if you are the only person doing this or engaging in whatever it is, like whatever hobbies you have or interests you have, there's this sense of wanting to share it with other people, because you don't want to feel alone, like experiencing it, or how good of a feeling you were experiencing. You want others to see that as well. You want to share that with others. And that, again, speaks to that sense, or that need that we all have as humans to want to connect and have other people notice that and connect with them to be able to do that as well. So.
And that's scary. Yeah. Being vulnerable is scary.
Oh, yeah.
Going and finding a place to join or to put yourself out there is kind of terrifying. As much as like it doesn't really seem like this giant, it's not walking on the moon, but it does. It's like feeling again, with the shame that comes along with feeling lonely,
Yep.
that external validation of I really wish I was liked by people, not wanting to talk about feeling lonely is what holds people back from sharing things. And so maybe if you can't share it all at the same time, maybe just asking someone, oh, hey, do you know any places where I could volunteer?
Yeah.
Or starting with something small, like if you have something creative that you would like to share, like say you do like to write poetry, you go to like a poetry night at the Dusty Bookshelf, and maybe for the first time you just sit and you watch. But like we've talked about this on previous episodes, just being in the spaces where things are happening is the first step. And it seems tiny, but it can feel huge.
It feels so simple.
Yeah.
And it is so simple. And that's the thing. It's like, even when it comes to service, right? Like we think of that as other things that we always recommend, right? Like save your money for a rainy day, or don't like invest, or like just get through all your salary when you get that as well, right? So thinking about like just simple things like that. But all those things tend to be like things for the future that we're thinking about. But when it comes to like acts of service, the best part about it is not only does it help the other person that you're helping, right? But it also impacts you tremendously, because it brings us that sense of joy today, and physiologically it tends to increase like the oxytocin in our body as well, which is basically the feeling, like the mushy or lovey feeling
the bonding
that we get. Yeah. And so a lot of times, like helping someone or having someone help you tends to increase that oxytocin that we experience in ourselves as well. And so just a simple thing like that is you finding that joy in the today as well, and you're getting those benefits immediately. It's not something that you have to like wait for.
Yeah. And it's not the kind of, well, not even kind of unhealthy, the unhealthy like dopamine boost that you get from social media. It's a different kind than that.
For sure.
And so one thing that I struggle with so much is finding a purpose that's not tied to productivity as well. Because, acts of service that we're talking about, maybe volunteering doesn't make you money, and you do have to make time for that. Or being creative, maybe if you can make money off of like being creative, that sounds awesome. Do that. Like they say you should have a hobby that you love and a hobby to make you money.
It's really hard to do that, and if you do it, that's awesome. Like all the more respect to you.
But like not tying the quality of how good you think something is to its monetary value, or not tying your purpose to some sort of productivity, but more so of like, I did this thing, how do I feel afterwards?
Yeah.
And that I feel is so difficult for me, even as a college student, because I'm taking credit hours, I'm working a job, it seems like I have no time in the day for myself. And sometimes when I do have time in the day for myself, I feel a little bit guilty about it, because I'm like, I'm not making money or doing homework right now. And that feels wrong. And that can, in its own kind of sense, feel really lonely, because it's like, well, all of these other people are doing these amazing things and I'm kind of just stuck here. Yeah. The, comparison is the thief of joy, as cheesy as it sounds. There's a type of loneliness in comparison of like, I feel like I'm the only person at this place.
Yep.
But everybody feels that way.
Yep. And that's where the other side of social media double-edged sword comes in, right? It's so much easier to find ways to compare ourselves because we have so much access to be able to see what other people are doing. And obviously a lot of times on social media, most people are always talking about moments where they are either being successful or feeling happy or doing like positive things, right? And so you don't get a lot of space to be vulnerable or show your vulnerable self even on that. And so a lot of times it's that skewed data that we're getting on social media, and that obviously, again, us being human, who easily internalize things towards ourselves, it just makes it so much easier and feeds into that sense of like, oh, I'm not doing enough if I'm not being productive or if I'm not making enough money or doing as much as what other people are doing as well. And it's unfortunately how we've been socialized just in our world as well, because especially like in America, and I'm not American, so I've been lucky and fortunate enough to experience different cultures around the world as well. Coming from growing up in the Middle East and coming to America, I was able to see the differences in like the culture over here and how there's this sense of individualism as compared to collectivism, which is very prominent in my culture, being an Indian person as well, or a South Asian person as well. So yeah, all those things tend to be impacting, like, again, our environment and how we're socialized to or brought up as well, kind of impact the mentality that we have as well.
Definitely. It's a domino effect.
For sure.
Of like, not to call out capitalism, but I feel like in a capitalist society, I'm not saying anything good or bad about it, but that is the way that it is of like, it's, you make your own destiny, which is awesome, but it's also, don't feel worthless if you're not constantly grinding to make yourself into the person that you are.
For sure.
It is worth it to help out a friend or to enjoy something by yourself or to share something with someone. Because I find that when I look back at memories of high school or different parts of my life, I don't necessarily remember the homework assignments that I didn't turn in, or studying for a test, or the hours that I worked at a job trying to make money for college. What I remember is hanging out with my coworkers after hours and hanging out with them, or staying up late on FaceTime studying with my friends. Yeah. I remember the jokes that they told me. I don't remember a single thing about. I was not good at history, so I don't know if I remember any of the dates that we studied for a certain time period in history, but I certainly remember the way that it felt to feel that companionship of like, oh man, we might fail this test, but at least we're gonna do it together. Yeah. And so remembering that there is a time for everything and balance is the answer, but thinking about, you don't always have to be grinding and going through the motions. Right. There is an answer. Right. And as much as, we already talked about anxiety, and how scary it can be to kind of put yourself out there. What I guess would the experience be like for someone who has social anxiety to try, who is maybe suffering from chronic loneliness, to try and put themselves out there? Because, well, first, what is social anxiety and how is it just different from being shy?
Yeah, so I would say shyness is more of a trait or a temperament. So it's very natural for us to feel reserved, especially in new environments or around new people. Like, it's absolutely natural for us to feel shy. And again, not everyone feels that way, but it's natural to feel that way. Social anxiety, on the other hand, where it's when it becomes like a diagnosable thing, that is basically this persistent fear that someone experiences. The fear of being judged, right? The fear of not saying the right things or not talking about the right things, or the fear of like not having anything to talk about or not being interesting enough in social settings. That all those things, again, lead to the avoidance or increased isolation when, again, you should be doing the opposite of that, or you want to be doing the opposite of that, which is continuing to form connection. So a lot of times it does tend to paralyze us. And I think like noticing when you get that thought of, oh, this is just how it is for me, this is just how I am, that is probably your major red flag of like, okay, I probably need to talk to someone about this as well. And so, so that, I would say that is technically what social anxiety would be defined as. And so it's different from shyness because there's the fear part of it is what's different about it. So just thinking about like, and again, starts with being aware, right? Checking in with yourself and noticing like, how am I feeling in these situations is when you can start to notice and figure out like whether this is an issue for you or something that you're struggling with or not.
And if you find that you are struggling with social anxiety, but you are determined to like combat this chronic loneliness, what are some coping mechanisms that you can try to overcome social anxiety?
Yeah. So I can say again, solutions are always super easy, right? It's always like, okay, find ways to connect. And I can that's a lot easier said than done for someone with social anxiety. You don't understand, and it's hard for us to even imagine like the amount of distress they experience just even thinking about interacting with someone new as well. And so it starts with, again, starting small, right? So identifying, and I tend to take things from either an emotionally focused or behavioral perspective. And so I often try to like combine the two in terms of understanding firstly what the sense of self-worth or their own opinions of themselves as well, and where that comes from, because a lot of times that tends to impact like the core beliefs that we tend to create and see our worldview through as well. And so thinking about just starts with taking some steps, right? So small steps as like when you're checking out at the grocery store, just saying thank you, or just asking the cashier like how their day was. We've started with like small things like that, or sometimes also identifying like who are some people in your life that you do feel comfortable with, and can you have that person come with you to all these new settings or situations socially and that kind of stuff, to help you give that sense of like, I have one person that I feel comfortable with, and I can, and again, it's not always possible for everyone, but thinking about like even the small steps of what it can take. But the biggest thing is like, once it starts with like being able to be vulnerable with someone. And if you haven't had someone in your life that you felt comfortable doing that with, then that's where you can start, right? And again, it can be with a complete stranger, because you may or may not believe this, but you are definitely not the only person experiencing this or having that thought process as well. So it just goes back to like starting small and figuring out like what are some small changes or situations that I can kind of challenge myself to put myself in, to be able to like try those things out. Because again, you need some amount of pressure for change to happen. It's not just going to happen overnight, and it's not going to just happen by like one random conversation you had with your grocery store cashier as well. So it's, once you ask for help for it, that also takes like continuously continuing to ask for help from other people, and that takes vulnerability.
And the fear of rejection is ever present.
Oh, yeah,
always.
sure.
And that's not to be taken lightly. I mean, there are several factors to consider because vulnerability is not, it is much more accepted now, I think, for people to be vulnerable. But I know that a lot of the time, sometimes family dynamics can really play into whether or not someone is comfortable being vulnerable. Yeah. If you always had to be the family therapist, I know that like a lot of eldest children sometimes feel like they are responsible for taking on the emotional weight of either their parents or their parents and their siblings, and things like that. Or especially if you are a first-generation college student, that's a very vulnerable position to be in. Or if you're a first-generation college student, or maybe you are very far from home, whether you have moved to a different state for college or even moved to a different country for college. Yeah. Maybe you are not extremely fluent in the language of which everyone typically speaks where you're going to college. And that is an extremely vulnerable position, and it can be hard to, one, express yourself accurately because you are kind of in survival mode, but it also, your vulnerability, your guard is so up when you're in those positions. And so you don't want to you're already in a vulnerable position. So emotional vulnerability really is not the first thing that is on your mind. Yeah. But what's important to remember when thinking about fear of rejection or fear of not fitting in is that the worst thing that can happen, although it's mortifying, is that they say no, or someone maybe says one word to you and leaves the conversation.
Right.
In that case, it probably has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And as much as human beings internalize those things, taking away the extremity of your thoughts, and this happens to me too, because we're human, taking away that feeling of the world is going to end if someone is, I try to talk to someone and they do not reciprocate the same kind of energy. You work up the nerve and then you go and speak to someone, or you try to go join something, or you go try to do something and it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
The world won't end, but it kind of feels like it will. And so remembering that nothing of that nature is that serious.
Yeah.
So taking away the extreme, the rah factor of it can be really helpful for some people.
That's reminding me of this quote that I just read this morning, actually. It was from a psychologist, I think. I can't remember his first name, but his last name was Fromm. And he basically said, the truth always lies, or the solution always lies in between the two extremes. And so identifying, we tend to identify those extremes as sometimes like cognitive distortions as well. So this all or nothing, or black and white thinking of it's either this or that and nothing else can be possible as well. And a lot of times in those situations where we do get those feelings of rejection, it makes it very easy for us to think that way or continue to think that way.
Yeah. And the important thing to remember is that everyone's truth lies in between the two extremes.
For sure.
Everyone on the planet, practically, unless, maybe you just have really, really good emotional health.
Yeah.
Feels at some point or another lonely. Lots of people suffer from chronic loneliness. And so the strange part about it is that chronic loneliness is not an isolated issue in one person. Lots of people together are lonely.
Right. And that's why, even when we've had a number of different process groups and group therapy and stuff as well, we tend to refer a lot of people who have social anxiety to groups, because that is hey, this is the perfect opportunity for you to try these things out. And a lot of times what we've seen is just getting that sense of that they're not alone in terms of experiencing the things they experience is so therapeutic in itself. It's not the solution. It's not fixed it in any way, but just knowing that they are not alone and they are not the only ones going through this is so much more therapeutic and so helpful for them, to help them realize okay, I can feel vulnerable with this other person because they have similar experiences to me as well.
And asking for help in and of itself is a form of connection.
For sure.
So, asking for help takes an entirely different kind of courage. But if you can work up the nerve and ask for help, that also opens doors for you to meet other people and to make connections and to understand that, you are not alone. That's the whole point of these episodes.
Yeah, absolutely.
You are not alone.
For sure. And you're not broken if you feel lonely as well, right? Loneliness is not a flaw. It's a sign that's telling you something. So it's not easy to accept that as well. And that's why I have the sense of you got to be aware before you accept it, before you can figure out what you want to change to work on that.
And it's also not an issue that you have to push down or ignore.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, sometimes think that, I feel really lonely all the time, but it's not as bad as, I think it is. And so I don't really need to address it. I can kind of just, I can just exist in this state.
Yep.
Whereas, I don't know, I think about it like this. When you go to the doctor, you might go to the doctor for a sore throat. You're not going to go to the doctor because somebody else is going to the doctor for a broken leg, And so don't be afraid if you are feeling lonely to seek help for that, because it is an issue. It's an issue that can become chronic and is, I think, a lot deeper than people anticipate.
Yeah.
And you don't have to live in that state of loneliness
Right,
forever.
right. And going back to what you said about avoidance, right? Like that's a really easy thing to do as well, right? But what we don't think about is loneliness is an emotion, and avoiding emotions does help in the short term. In that moment, it does help for you to not think about it, but it's still persistent. It's still there. It's still a thing that you were experiencing, and that's not going away until it gets what it gets, right? So I like to always give this example of, and if anyone that I've seen in therapy listens to this, I've probably mentioned this multiple times, but it's, have you seen like Family Guy?
Yes.
Have you seen that scene where Stewie goes to Lois and he's like, Mom, mommy, and he keeps saying that for such a long period
the
of
like
time.
ringtone.
Yeah. And then he just like says hi and runs away. But basically the point is like him saying that mom, right? That it's like an infant that's like crying. And you don't know why the infant is crying. Maybe it's hungry. Maybe it's tired. Maybe it's sleepy. Maybe it just needs some attention or someone to play with. And until it gets that, it's going to keep crying.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with like the emotion we feel with loneliness as well. It's going to continue to persist and continue to be there until you find a way to, firstly, again, acknowledge and accept like, okay, I am struggling with this. What do I need to do? And then figuring out what you need to do.
And like you said early in the episode, awareness of the crying infant
Yeah, exactly.
is the first step.
For sure.
And there are lots of resources available to you on K-State campus if you do want help. So we're getting around the time when we need to wrap up, but is there anything you want to plug or say before the end of this episode?
I want to just give some, I guess, practical things that they can do in terms of even seeking ways to give service or just give to other people as well. So even thinking about like Cat's Cupboard on campus, I know they're always looking for volunteers. And so just going in there and volunteering for like an hour or 30 minutes, or like the animal shelter, like in Manhattan also is always looking for volunteers. So finding ways to give, and again, it can be hard to find that time being a college student, but again, that can be that thing that you are doing for yourself as well, is finding that sense of connection through that and giving to others. That's one thing that I'm thinking about. And in terms of also, like, again, connection doesn't have to be, it's not about like finding the perfect group or like the perfect person that aligns with your interests and that kind of stuff as well. It's more about just showing up and letting it happen naturally. Those often tend to be the most long-lasting connections, are the ones that are not manufactured or forced, and you allow them to happen naturally as well. So.
Absolutely. Sometimes self-care is not a face mask and avocado toast. Yeah. Sometimes self-care is putting yourself out there and going to an event that maybe you're afraid to go to. Being brave for yourself is another form of self-care. So if you're someone who like likes to do face masks and have a, be like, oh, self-care night.
For sure.
Maybe one night your self-care night can be like, I'm going to go to this movie at the Union, because they show free movies here. Yeah. And I'm going to go, maybe by myself, maybe with some friends. I'm going to put myself out there. Mm-hmm. And so to wrap up, thank you so much for all of the wonderful, wonderful advice and just thoughtfulness. I really, really enjoyed this episode just because, I don't know, I love psychology and I love talking about, doing things for yourself that are good, because I am someone who has felt lonely before, like everyone, and has, struggled and still sometimes struggles with finding a place that I feel like I belong or finding a purpose, because that's what college is about. Yeah. And as a college student, that's what I'm doing all the time. Yeah. And it can feel draining, but it's nice to know that I'm not alone. And it is nice to know that if I feel lonely and I'm existing in a state of loneliness or a state of feeling like I'm always in survival mode, that is not a state that lasts forever. Yeah. It does not have to last forever. Yeah. So if you're someone who feels that way, it can really feel all-consuming. Yeah. And it can feel like the loneliness and that the way that things feel right now will last forever when you really can't see a way out. Yeah. But it will not last forever, and you will find your way. And there are things that you can do to find your way.
For sure.
You just got to be brave and remember that you aren't alone.
For sure. Yeah. And thanks for having me as well. And I appreciate your vulnerability as well, and the efforts that you've made in terms of just addressing such an underlying topic that is often not talked about. And like you said, Belle, you're not alone. And again, loneliness is not a flaw, it is a sign. So listen to it.
Well, thank you so much. If you would like to know more about the resources mentioned in this podcast, they are linked in the description. If you would like to know more about how to get involved and more about the wonderful guest on this episode, thank you so much, Karan. More information about him is also going to be provided in the description. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.